Welcome, welcome, everyone, one and all. If you can hear me, if you hear the sound of my voice, then you are the resistance. And we'll give a few minutes for people to join us. I am Leroy Truth for Leroy Truth Investigations, and please put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, and put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. All right. And this is going to be a banger of a show, powerful, powerful, powerful show. Now, I have a very, very disturbing image in the thumbnail of Dr. Ena Farley. And I'm not sure if YouTube will repress, shadow ban the announcement of this video, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But regardless of how many people we have on the live stream, I'm going to re-upload it as a freestanding video. So first, I want to give a shout out to a number of the people in the chat. I'm so happy and I really appreciate you spending some time with me tonight. We have Lou, Tavi, Vivian, 10TP, President Ranker, King C, Victor Rice, Hillsborough, President Ranker, Rob, DJ, Mike, Christy, Curtis, Larry. Thanks so much for joining me. And first part of business, please hit the like button. That will tell YouTube that you're here, and they will give more reach to this video. So hit the like button and put a comment on there as well. Barbara Rogers, JC News, again, Christy Hutter, Observing Paranoid People, thank you so much. Now, a couple things before we get started, and today's going to be a banger because I have special guests. Many of you have seen the video of Dr. Ena Farley, a beautiful woman who's made a profound impact in our world. 84 years old, and I happened to come across a YouTube video that had a few likes on it, and I was so moved by what happened, which 84-year-old Dr. Ena Farley was forcibly removed from her home by police and a social worker and forced into a nursing home. And many people have asked for an update. Leroy, can you let us know what happened? Also, why didn't the son, one of her sons was there. Why didn't he stop the police? Why didn't he protect her? And I made some assumptions when I was watching the video because I heard the son and saying, man, if that was my mother, I would have, even if I got arrested, I would have stopped that from happening. However, I'm going to go into this more detail, but to just give you a bit here, I spoke with Mr. Jonathan Farley, who is with me today, and he had reached out to me, and he has sent me a very detailed message about why he didn't have the police, get in the way of the police or try to have them stop doing that to his mother. If he got arrested, he told me, there's no one on his mother's side to help his mother. And a police officer, I don't even think this was on video, or maybe I didn't hear it, but Jonathan had told me, a police officer told him that if you even speak to your mother, I will arrest you. I mean, this is despicable. We're supposed to treat our elderly with respect and care that they deserve. And no matter what their accomplishments in life, they're our parents, for God's sakes. And I know Jonathan deeply loves his mother. And we've talked extensively since my video aired. And my video that I put out was over 3 weeks ago. And this video is still getting views to this day. Most videos have a shelf life, day or two. After 3 weeks, this video is getting around the world. And right now it just hit, I think, 72,000 views. And I'm doing this live stream because I want, if anyone hasn't watched that video, watch it again. And then call the people that I have listed in there for accountability. Because my purpose in doing these videos and in covering Dr. Ena Farley's story is to get her out of the prison nursing home that she has been forced into by Chris Farley, one of her other sons, against her will. And you're going to get the real story, the deep, true story from Jonathan Farley, the good son, who is helping her, who lives with her, and is doing everything he can to get his mother home. However, Chris Farley, the brother, has banned Jonathan from even seeing his mother. Chris Farley has banned Ena Farley's friends from seeing her. And that thumbnail you saw when you saw that I was going to be doing a live stream video tonight, is from what happened to her after she was forced into this basically a prison nursing home. She never injured herself before when she was living living in her home along with Jonathan. She gets forced into a nursing home. That's how she ends up. So, a couple things I want to share before we get started with the story. I'm going to share a video, some of the video that I shared previously, so it brings context and reminds you what the story is about. And I'm also going to share a 2-minute video of a 94-year-old woman being taken out of her home against her will. And when police officers do this, it is wrong. The police officers who took Jonathan Farley's mother, Ena Farley, out of her home, according to what I've found out, and Jonathan confirmed this, he can confirm this, there was no court order to remove her. It's just Chris Farley wanted her out, possibly for money, is what I hear. And she had accrued quite a bit of money, in the $1 million or $2 million, possibly. There was no court order. The police who took her out did so absolutely unlawfully, from what I understand. Jonathan will clarify that. And a couple things is, someone contacted me about a month and a half ago, and they said, Leroy, we've been watching your channel, and we really like your stories, how you present yourself and the mission you do. And would you be open to doing a documentary about your work, your Leroy Truth Investigations work, and your life at large? And I vetted them, make sure that they were on the up and up and they weren't trolling. And these are two incredible professionals. And we spent the entire weekend filming this documentary about my work in Leroy Truth Investigations and many other aspects of my life that you don't even know about. So stay tuned for that. It's the first documentary done about a YouTube First Amendment activist, police accountability, government accountability activist. And also, stay tuned, because many of you know that there's been an ongoing series of Cold Spring, New York, that I've done with the meanest mayor in America, Mayor Kathleen Foley. And I have an additional story that I've just gotten started in Union City, New Jersey, where it's alleged that Mayor Brian P. Stack, mayor and state senator, may be the most corrupt mayor in the United States of America. Or not U.S. senator, he's a state senator. And I have scores and scores of people contacting me. People in the police department, people in the city government, people in the Department of Public Works, people in the Board of Education, and residents reaching out to me, scores of them every day, saying, this is a corrupt mayor. This is their claims, not mine. I make no statements. These are allegations. They are saying this is the most corrupt mayor. We are afraid of him. There's pay to play. There's retaliation that constantly is happening if we don't donate to his campaign. So stay tuned. I have a banger of a video tomorrow where a Department of Public Works worker on video, he claims that Mayor Brian P. Stack spied on him, found out he didn't vote, personally calls him on the phone and pressures him to vote and says, oh, you didn't vote. Why? Oh, I'm going to send you an absentee ballot. And then I even have a letter that I read that Brian P. Stack sent out, I understand, to all the city workers who did not vote, saying, hey, I found out through public records that you didn't vote. Why? Don't I do a good job? Not voting can have consequences, etc. This is explosive. This will be national news. I will be releasing that video tomorrow. I believe it's at 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. It'll be a live premiere, short video, only 11-minute video. It's powerful. So with that, I want to read some of the comments here. And we have here, when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. When the government fears the people, you have freedom or you have liberty. Absolutely. And so with that, I'm going to share And I have my producer, Scalzo, here. Thank you so much, Scalzo, for all you do. He's in the background here. Share the other video and skip ahead the first 10 seconds as an advertisement of the 94-year-old woman being forcefully removed from her home. And what would you do if you were a police officer? Skip ahead. Not too much. Go back. I want you to get the tail end of that. That's fine.
We don't want to hurt you.
Oh, I'm going to pause it. Hold on. I'm going to pause it there. We don't want to hurt you. She's 94. My mother just died last year. She was 92. That breaks my heart. And then the police saying, I don't want to hurt you. Then freaking don't hurt her. Stop. Continuing.
God, look what you're doing to me.
Get arms. Just get arms.
Try not to hurt me. Help me, please. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No.
I'm not going to be able to get her in without going to the other side.
Someone's there.
Yeah.
Juanita, come sit down.
There you go.
Sit down.
Everything I got scarred.
Juanita Fitzgerald struggled to hold back tears as she fidgeted with her handcuffs. You can still see the bruises on her arm.
Is this sick, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, this is depraved. This is something those people that Germany in those 1940s did to people. And she reminds me, I mean, she looks so much like my mother right before she passed away. I mean, remarkably so. And, you know, I'm really sad to share something like this with you. But unless we hold the light of transparency by exposing these stories to you and then you taking action, always peaceful, never violent. I condemn everything with threats of violence or any violence, always peaceful, legal action. But let your voices be heard to redress the government, to redress the prosecutors, and whoever else Jonathan feels that we should be redressing. Because they love it when people they watch a video on YouTube and then people comment, which is important. That exposes it, gets us reach so we can get the story out to more people. But they love it when you stop at that. They love it. All those people, they think they're being activists because they comment on YouTube videos and stop. And that's step one. I so appreciate that you all are here and you do that. But what you do is step two. Call and email the people responsible for this behavior and for Jonathan's mother's behavior. Continuing, it's a short video, but we'll continue and watch the end of it here. Another minute or so.
Where she says officers had to forcibly remove her from the Franklin House Independent Living Center.
I said, if you're going to take me, you're going to have to carry me. Yep, I did.
She says despite what's happened to her, all she wants is to be able to go back home. But since she's been evicted, she can't, and she has no place else to go.
I don't have anybody. My family's in Tennessee.
A spokesperson for the Franklin House says Juanita told them she thought she was going to die soon and had not paid her portion of the rent for the past 3 months. But Juanita says that's not true and that she tried to pay back in October.
Do you need help paying your rent?
No, honey.
You just think they were trying to kick you out because they didn't want to deal with you
She's been
anymore?
for a year trying to do that.
Terry Goldberg lives at the facility and says she knows Juanita well, even offered her food on several occasions.
It is what it is about her being there. You know, I know there's lots of mixed feelings about it. I, for one, feel like we offered her all the help that we could offer her and she refused it.
While Juanita admits she's not one to accept help willingly, she never thought it would land her in the Lake County Detention Center.
You realize how smug, I mean, you realize because you see it, how smug that worker at that independent living facility was? How incredibly uncaring and compassionate? They need to trade places. That woman needs to be the one in an orange jumpsuit, chained to a wheelchair. I mean, this is beyond wrong. And this is not a rare occurrence. What happened to Dr. Ena Farley is not a rare occurrence. That's why we got to take action past this. And also, anyone here, if you'd like to support my work, if you do a super chat, super thanks, PayPal, always appreciated. And there's hours and hours and hours that goes into this, and I'm glad to do it, but never expected, but always appreciated.
And she says all she wants is to get out of here and be able to go someplace she can finally call home.
They'll take me somewhere.
Does that just make your blood boil? Most people just watch those things. They don't do anything about them. And make sure everyone to smash that like button, gets the word out there more. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And Lenny Malley, Cliff Williams. And we're going to do a call-in show, too. So stay tuned. About 20 minutes or so, we'll be opening the phone lines. You can ask questions directly of Jonathan Farley about his mother that he may not have covered. Tyrants Exposed, JC News Now, Joe Black. Thank you all so much for being here. Oklahoma Outlaw, Preston Ranker, Oso. Condolences about my mother. And so I'm going to bring on now Jonathan Farley. And Scalzo, you had something? No. And I'm going to bring on Jonathan Farley. And I want to put a face to the story. And then I'm going to show some of the video just to refresh it. Many, if you have not seen it, if you've seen it, it bears watching again. And Jonathan, you can stop me anytime during the video. And I'm going to bring him up here. So welcome, Jonathan Farley.
Thank you. And thank you for your work helping my mother.
You're very welcome. And I'm going to, before I start the video, really briefly, how did you end up finding me and reaching out to me?
Actually, someone told me about your video, and so that's how I knew about it. But yes, when you did get to the part about why I didn't physically intervene, I think that's when I wrote you. But I also wanted to support your work regardless.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of courage because I really threw Jonathan under the bus, and that was my mistake as a journalist. I shouldn't have done that. We're not supposed to connect dots. We're never supposed to assume. If we don't know, we need to ask, and we have to ask if we don't know. And if we don't know, as a journalist, I should never connect the dots. So he was gracious enough to still reach out to me, and I'm, strong enough to admit when I'm wrong. So thank you for, again, your openness and to forgive me for that. So thank you. And I always want to set the record straight. So now let's watch some of this video here. And
I'm not
again,
gonna grab her. I can't. I'm not gonna grab her. I can't.
I'm going to stop it there for a second because literally, who said what? What were they saying? Who was saying that, Jonathan?
So that was the supervisor of Zone C of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office in Monroe County, New York State. His name is Sergeant Mazenga. And that was probably about an hour or two before they dragged my mother out by force. So, of course, he's, as you correctly state, he's just lying to her face.
Right. Literally saying, we're not going to take her out.
But we already knew he was lying because I had actually had a meeting with him 2 days before that. I was asking him, where is my mother? At that point, I did not know. And he wouldn't tell me, nor would he tell me why he wouldn't tell me. And I couldn't get him to explain that. But I did get assurances from him, as far as I can remember, that would have been February 3rd, 2023, that police wouldn't be coming to our house again. And there you see, 2 days later, not only are police at our house, he is at our house.
And did he have a warrant or did he not have a warrant?
No, there's no warrant. There's no documentation of any kind whatsoever. None whatsoever. And so they can't explain why they were even there, quite frankly.
Right. So to clarify, there was no court order. A judge did not say, oh, she was found incompetent by a social worker to care for herself. There's a court order, so the police are there to take her out. That didn't happen?
There was no court order. No judge had declared my mother to be mentally incompetent. No doctor had declared my mother to be mentally incompetent. No doctor had evaluated my mother and said this, and she was not mentally incompetent, at least as of January 17, 2023. Before my mother was kidnapped, and I use that term even though lawyers hate it because there's some technical definitions about kidnapping, but she was kidnapped by the layperson's definition. But before my mother was kidnapped, I spoke with her every day or practically every day for years. talking about sometimes complex issues such as current events, my personal life. So I can assert categorically she was not mentally incompetent, at least as of January 17, 2023. But there's a precursor to the violence that you saw on the video from February 5. So on January 19 or afterwards, a woman named Mary Ho, H-O, was put in my mother's house by my brother, Chris Farley, against my mother's wishes. By January 23rd, or 22nd rather, I got a phone call from Mary Ho saying that a church friend of my mother's wanted to see my mother in my mother's own house, and Mary Ho would not let this church friend see my mother, wouldn't let this church friend talk to my mother. And I was wondering where, this is insane. There's some kind of list. Mary Ho told me the church friend, she's not on the list. So my brother, Chris Farley, had created some sort of list of people who were allowed to talk to my mother. But my brother, Chris Farley, lives 350 miles away in New Rochelle, New York. He doesn't know who my mother's friends are, and I don't even know why there should be a list anyway of people prohibited from even talking to my mother, even if my mother wants to talk to them in my mother's own house.
That sounds like literally being in prison where here's the approved list. These are the only people can come into the prison. She's a free, independent woman who can take care of herself. And she was given a list, and eventually the list was deleted. And you're not on that list.
Yeah, so we don't know who was on that initial list, but a church friend was not put on it, who did know my mother. She even showed her a photograph but I went to see what was going on. My mother called me the next day and the day after that saying she's never been as frightened. She's never felt as stepped on, that Mary Ho was treating her like an idiot dog, my mother's words, that she couldn't believe that Chris, her son, my brother, had done this to her. My mother said she would never have done this to her own mother, to put someone in her house without her permission. And then by the Friday, January 27, on 2023, I decided to come back to Brockport, New York, where my mother lives. It's my address, but I worked somewhere else. And it was even worse than I expected. Mary Ho had taken over about half of our house, 4 rooms, including having 50 boxes in the garage, 50 boxes. She had moved my mother from my mother's own bedroom to another room. But even in that new room, Mary Ho had 2 gigantic suitcases, each one bigger than any suitcase I'd ever attempted to lift in my entire life, in the new room that Mary Ho had put my mother in, with my mother's belongings strewn on the floor, messy, a mess, and my mother hated mess. So my brother Chris Farley drove up with his son, who's about 6'5", 220 pounds, 20 years old, and my mother argued with Chris Farley for about 2 hours late in the night, saying, I don't want a stranger living in my home. Note that Chris Farley had no legal authority to put anyone in my mother's home. There's a lot of confusion. People think Chris Farley had power of attorney, therefore he can do whatever he wants. He cannot. I spoke with an attorney who told me that only the person whose name is on the deed gets to decide who's in the house. And the only person whose name was on the deed was my mother, and my late father. So Chris had no say in any of this. But the next day, January 28, Chris Farley and his son leave along with Mary Ho. Mary Ho's belongings are still in the house, but on January 29, my mother calls Mary Ho and says, don't come back except to remove your belongings. And then together, my mother and I send a text message and an email message to Mary Ho saying the same thing. We go to the Monroe County Sheriff's office and talk to a Sergeant Toomey, and a report is filed. That report, Monroe County now says they can't find about Mary Ho. 2 days later, Chris Farley, Mary Ho, my other brother, Anthony Farley, and the police come and they remove my mother from her house. Now, they did that without violence. They didn't even tell us why they were there. They didn't even tell us who they were. But at the end of it, my mother is gone, even though on police video, my mother's saying, I don't want to leave my property. On police video, my mother is telling them, please leave my house. They don't leave. And on police video, the police are saying they, meaning my brother, I guess, control the house, which was false. They did not control the house. It was my mother's house. She was the only person who controlled the house. She owned it. But she left with them. A policewoman told me that my brothers had taken my mother out to have dinner or maybe for a drive. But when my mother did not return by night, I knew they had taken her. I waited another day, and then I tried to file a missing persons report The police refused to take it, saying she was not missing. I then said, okay, then I want to file a kidnapping report. They refused to do that, saying she was not kidnapped, but they wouldn't tell me where she was, leading to the February 3rd, 2023 meeting that I had with Sergeant Mazenga, the man you showed in the video, trying to find out where my mother was. He wouldn't tell me why he wasn't telling me, but I got his assurance, as far as I can remember, that police weren't going to be involved anymore. But then 2 days later, I remembered that my mother was scheduled to visit, to attend a concert in Brockport with a friend. And I went to that location and my mother was there. My mother does have short-term memory problems. She would often not remember what happened the day before, but she could reason, she can make decisions. And as I said, we discuss complex issues sometimes, going back years. So I told my mother at this event that the woman, she was there with her friend and Mary Ho. And I told her Mary Ho had helped kidnap her 5 days before. My mother immediately said, let's go. She asked Mary Ho to step aside. Mary Ho would not. Mary Ho called 911 on me. My mother decided we should just go back to our house. And that leads up to the video that you showed part of, with the police coming to our house, but they had no business coming to our house. My mother owns that house. She decided to return to her house. We don't know how they physically prevented her from being back in her house between the time they first took her on January 31st and the second time on February 5th. Did they lock her up in a room? Did they tie her up? Did they muzzle her? How did they stop her from calling home? But at any rate, when she's home, she is home. And she says to the police, I want to be here. I'm happy now. I want to be here under the care and guidance of my son, Jonathan. She tells the police this. And yet they took, after about 2 hours of her calmly speaking to police, they took her by force. They used multiple different excuses. First, they claimed she had to take some pills that weren't in the house. The pills were in the house, as the police were told, but there were pills for things like diabetes. And my mother tells a social worker, Aubrey Baldoff, have you ever heard of anyone dying of diabetes? And yeah, I mean, you do if you get your legs cut off, but not from not taking a pill for a few hours. And then that's the excuse they used. But then they morphed it into another excuse later on, after they took her by force, hurting her so badly she was screaming, "You're breaking my arm." Apparently, they said later that they took her because she was showing aggressive behavior. But if you watch the police video, which you can see on the site enafarleytaken.com, she's speaking with them calmly for hours. So it's just a complete lie. And my attorney, Vivek Thiagarajan, tells me that the police, once doctors had determined that my mother had not been showing aggressive behavior, they should have returned her to the place they took her from, her home. But they didn't. They took her to Cranberry Landing, we now know, but I still didn't know for another month that that's where she was, because they wouldn't tell me. And then the question also is, why is that legal? How was that legal, that they could take someone and not tell me where she was? Chris Farley admits in court documents that he didn't want her location announced so that she could not change her power of attorney, which she had said she wanted to do on January 30th.
Jonathan, pause there. Some people have asked, who has power of attorney and power of banking? Then we're going to get to the video after that.
Yes. So Chris was, in fact, given power of attorney back in 2008, if I remember correctly, and he was made healthcare proxy in 2014. It had nothing to do with my mother's memory. My mother's memory was perfectly fine in 2014. My father was even still alive in 2008. It's just something we in our family do. My mother has power of attorney over me. It does not give you the right, as my attorney at the time, Samantha Crane, confirmed, and she said that the court evaluator agreed with her, that it does not give you the power to take someone from her own house against her will. It does not give you the power to put someone to institutionalize someone against her will. So people have that confusion, including the police. But I also want to note that the police admit on body camera footage that they saw no documents. So even the alleged power of attorney documents that Chris Farley supposedly has, and he may in fact have that, they didn't see. So they should not have taken any action on February 5. They should have said, you know what, we've got to wait. And the healthcare proxy form explicitly says that it's for when my mother is in a coma or when she otherwise cannot express her wishes after suffering an irreversible brain injury. I don't know if not remembering what happened the day before typically constitutes as an irreversible brain injury, but she certainly expressed her wishes and continued to do so. On February 12, she's even in an altercation with someone at Cranberry Landing, which results in my mother falling back on the floor. They don't say she pushed her, so that she was pushed, but the church friend who was allowed to see my mother at Cranberry Landing said that my mother wrote a note, which I've seen a blurry photo of that note, where my mother says she was shoved to the ground, apparently a second incident. And also the grievous injuries that I think you're showing your audience, that was from, according to the metadata, November 11, at least that's when the photo was taken, where she had 2 giant bruises on both sides of her face, blood in her eye, and she complains about pain in her chin. And the church friend who took that video said that my mother had initially told her that someone at an employee at Cranberry Landing had beaten her. So this is what's happening at this supposedly safe facility, something that never happened. She never had injuries like that in her entire life and never would have them, obviously, at home. In addition to, on October 26, winding up in the emergency room at a local hospital. I was called from that hospital and told that my mother had been found in the ground at Cranberry Landing and may have been there all night at this supposedly 24-hour facility. Incidentally, the church friend who took the video is now banned from going to Cranberry Landing, she said.
All right, so let's pause there. I want to watch more of the video, and many of you have watched it, but it will be a refresher. Now you can put a face with the direct factual stories filling in the blanks that this video doesn't share. And this is upside down world, ladies and gentlemen. Good is evil, and evil is perceived as good. And again, I want this story out there, and I want all of you to contact. I have one contact in the description of this, and anyone else, and we'll add this, to contact them tomorrow and demand the release of this wonderful woman who deserves to live her twilight years in grace with people who love her, her community, her church, her son, Jonathan Farley. Not being in this prison nursing home, being injured. We need to get her out of there ASAP. Free Ena Farley, hashtag. Let's watch some of this video here.
I'm not going to grab her. I can't. I'm not.
Sadistic.
I'm not going to grab her.
Pause. Okay, we got it fixed. But it is sadistic. I'm glad you underlined that. Sadistic and sadistic, and that's what this is. And smash that like button if you haven't. Invite more people. Let's get more people in this live stream. And so let's continue, Scalzo. Sadistic.
I'm not going to grab her. I can't. I'm not going to grab her. I can't.
Liar.
You can say no. He can say no. I can say no.
No, you can't take me.
But at the end of the day, you are going to be going to the hospital.
Well, you can't force me to do that.
We can force you. We can force you.
This is Jonathan's mother, you're seeing right here. We can force you. No legal order whatsoever. And I've gotten to know a number of police officers over the last week in Union City, New Jersey. And I got to tell you, I've met actual good police officers that do the right thing. These police officers are not doing the right thing. And I don't see one good cop there because someone should be stopping this from happening. And no one does. They escalate it.
I'm not going to grab her. I can't.
We can force you to get
My
on the
son,
stretcher.
no, you don't have to. No, do not.
You're okay. We're not.
No, I'm not going. I'm barefooted.
I know you are.
You're hurting me.
I am.
I'm not going. I don't want to go.
Human rights.
No.
This is her home. This is freaking America. United States of America. This can't happen, but it is. So it happened, so we need to hold every single person accountable. Not just fired, but charged, and they go in front of a jury of their peers
I
and
agree.
found guilty.
I want
to the
all of these
extent of the
people
law.
arrested.
Jonathan, go ahead.
The ambulance workers that you're looking at right now on the screen, as well as all of the police, I want all of them arrested. And it's extremely disturbing to me that I have not heard from the district attorney's office. But
so you contacted the district attorney's office
I
about
have written the district attorney's office 3 times and called once. The first 2 times were very early on, and I did get a call back from them saying they'll never charge anyone with anything like this, right? However, if you look at the police body camera footage, you'll see Sergeant Mazenga confirming that they did discuss with the district attorney's office charging me with false imprisonment of my mother. They discussed charging me with endangering the welfare of a child, the child being the 84-year-old woman, not my usual definition of child. And also, when I made the phone call a few weeks ago, I was told that put me onto an investigator. I have not heard from that investigator, but my brother's lawyer did make mention of my calling the district attorney's office, or he talked about how I had people call the district attorney's office, but it was the one day after I had called myself. And the previous week when I wrote the letter, my brother's attorney had also made mention of my telling people to contact the district attorney's office. So it appears to me, without sounding conspiratorial, that there is someone working for the district attorney's office who feeds information to a private attorney, but does not contact the relevant person, me. Of course, my mother would be the more relevant person, about an obvious crime. And there's no question that a crime occurred, whether it's kidnapping officially or whatever the real term is, which is equivalent to kidnapping. There is no question you had an independent, free person, my mother, dragged by force and hurt physically so badly, she screams, "You're breaking my arm," taken from her house. And the first time it happened, force may not have been used, but it was equally criminal because she's on video saying, "I do not want to leave my property," and they took her and never brought her back.
Right, against her will. Yes. And I don't care if it's an ambulance worker, an EMS worker, or a police officer. Those roles do not give them more authority over a free man or woman's or child's life.
Yes.
Than anyone else.
Yeah.
So we are witnessing major criminal activities right here.
Yes.
And there's been no accountability. And ladies and gentlemen, I have the phone number to the district attorney in the description of this video. Save it and please call. We want justice for Ena Farley. We want her home. And that's what you need to demand, and whatever else you want to share, always peacefully, always professionally. To the district attorney, demand she be released from this prison nursing home immediately. And what's the district attorney's name, Jonathan?
Sandra Doorley, and you can email districtattorney@monroecounty.gov, districtattorney@monroecounty.gov. But I want criminal charges filed. I want an actual investigation as to how that happened, that those police officers felt they could come to our home and stay in our home once they were told to go, once they clearly saw everything was fine and that the person said, "I am happy here now and I want to be here." And even the first time they came on January 31st, I want the district attorney's office or whoever else, if the district attorney's office is compromised, to do a full investigation. I'm not even bothering to tell people to go to the sheriff because obviously the sheriff isn't doing anything.
All right, amen. All right, continuing here, and we got to hold them accountable. We're witnessing documented criminal acts caught on video.
Yeah. And I want to note that we have not been allowed to have our own medical doctors evaluate my mother. I have seen my mother for exactly 40 minutes over the past 11 months. Because Chris Farley created a list, not just barring me, but barring everyone on earth, except perhaps 17 people, from seeing my mother from outside Cranberry Landing or telephoning my mother. And as I said, the church friend who shot some of the videos that clearly show my mother is not mentally incompetent from the time she's at Cranberry Landing has, as of December 2023, been barred from seeing my mother any further. So I am not in touch with anyone who can confirm that my mother is fine or can talk to my mother and report back to me. In fact, I had to call 911 for them to do a welfare check. The police called me and said that Cranberry Landing says I can visit my mother anytime. But in fact, when my lawyers contacted Cranberry Landing, they said I had to call Chris Farley. And given that Chris Farley is not allowing the church friend to see my mother, I doubt that he will say I can. But I also, quite frankly, I don't want to talk to Chris Farley. He should be in prison. There should be criminal charges filed against him,
right,
for orchestrating that kidnapping.
Yes, for orchestrating kidnapping was what you're witnessing here. And from what I understand, Jonathan, your mother's health has taken a turn like profoundly for the worse since she is out of her home, forced out of her home, kidnapped out of her home, and forced into this prison nursing home. Is that correct?
Yeah, so she's taken allegedly because she has a memory problem, although I've never heard of that. But since then, she's developed physical problems. You get reports from Cranberry Landing talking about the pain she feels, how she can't feel her thumb, how she has a pain in her right foot. These aren't things that she had before she was taken there. I mean, she had diabetes, so sometimes it'd be maybe some numbness, but we would have then made sure to take care of that right away. But the pain in her foot, no. Pain in her hand, no. She looked as if she aged years when I saw a photograph of her after having been at Cranberry Landing only a few months. And moreover, she has darkness coming up her legs, which she never had before she was taken to Cranberry Landing. So this might be a result of diabetes. I'm not a doctor, but we're not allowed to send our own doctors to evaluate her, much less have her own doctor. But I do want to say that her own doctor on February 6th, one day after the violence, he probably didn't know about the violence, but he sent a fax to another doctor questioning the legality of taking my mother and the necessity of taking my mother, saying that she was totally taken care of by me. In actual fact, I didn't have to take care of my mother. She was fine. She knew to take her pills. And that was the only medical condition that she had, that she took pills for things like diabetes, high blood pressure, vitamin C, stuff, and then her memory. But they're not helping her memory at Cranberry Landing, as far as I know. And moreover, at Cranberry Landing, someone named Retta Rivera made a Facebook post saying that she worked there for 3 months and that my mother recited what happened to her every day. So it shows that my mother actually can retain some new memories because she remembered, according to Retta Rivera, that she had been dragged out of her house by the police.
Absolutely. And I want to set the record straight because I learned this as well. We had someone in the chat say the son just let them take her. And he made an important judgment call in context. He could have attempted to fight the cops and they would have arrested him. And the police, one of the police officers told you, Jonathan, if you even talk to your mother while they're doing this, they will arrest you.
Yes, that same man,
right.
Sergeant Mazenga, threatened me right before they used force, saying that if I even spoke to my mother, not if I interfered with what they were doing, which I wasn't, but if I even spoke to her, he would arrest me for OGA. I asked him, what is OGA? He didn't explain, but so I knew that if I'd gotten arrested, no one would be able to help my mother. And also, I don't know if anyone would have been able to help get me out if I'd been arrested. But it's also important that I not be arrested because we now know from the police body camera footage that Mary Ho was talking to police, not on the day of the violence, although she was there, but on January 31st, when they took my mother the first time without violence in the home. She was telling the police, and the police were agreeing, that the plan was to that day remove my mother permanently from her house. They didn't tell us any of this. We were not aware of any of this. To remove my mother permanently from her home on that day. And Mary Ho said, once they get me out, they're going to change the locks and she's coming back. So it seems as if this was the plan, to transfer ownership of the house from my mother to Mary Ho, made by Chris Farley, who had no legal authority to do so. And Mary Ho clearly was not a home aide, as Chris Farley said in court documents, because she had no professional background in that area. My mother obviously didn't want her. My mother said she felt stepped on and was being treated like an idiot dog by Mary Ho. But this would have been 12 days or less after Mary Ho had been forced, after my mother had been forced to accept Mary Ho in her house by my brother, Chris Farley. So obviously, she wasn't there to be a home aide if the plan was to move my mother to Cranberry Landing, a place 30 miles away from her home.
Right.
So this was a clear plan. My brother had no authority to transfer ownership of my mother's house to this other party.
And how much money are we talking about, Jonathan? Because
well, this is interesting because the house, the last time my mother checked, was worth about evaluated as $120,000. I don't think it's even worth that much. However, my brother insisted that the house has to be sold for some reason. And then the question is, why? Because Cranberry Landing, even though it is theft to keep my mother there and force her to pay for it, costs $60,000 a year. My mother should have more than enough. She's 85 years old. My father was a professor at the local college, as was my mother, and my mother continues to get my father's pension even though he passed away.
So they save money. They save money up. So how much money are we talking approximately here?
So I didn't believe this for a while, but a family friend who also was not allowed to see my mother, her husband worked at the college and estimates that based on what she gets, my mother should have about $1 million or $2 million. And my attorney, who's my father's cousin, Ena Farley, who saved my mother, also believes that it's probably something like that. $1 million, maybe $2 million, but that's not what Chris Farley said my mother's assets were worth. We subpoenaed documents, and he said what my mother's assets were valued at in July 2023, and it's nowhere close to that. In fact, it's such a low figure, I couldn't even figure out how she could get that little money, how she could have assets valued at so low a value, unless the money had been taken. Between February and July 2023, Chris Farley gave two different numbers for the value of my mother's assets. And the number went down by about $150,000 with no explanation for why. And then later I found IRS letters, which said that my mother had underreported her taxable income 1 year by $53,000, 1 year by $57,000, another year by $58,000.
It was Chris
Farley was responsible for doing my mother's taxes in those tax years.
Yep.
Something funny is happening with my mother's assets, and that needs to be explored as a possible explanation for what we saw. But regardless of what might have been happening going back 10 years, which is what I want investigated, certainly between February and after February 2023, my mother's assets were effectively stolen from her because she did not agree to any of this. She has a house that she owns. She does not need to be spending $60,000 at Cranberry Landing for one room.
She lived very, very, very well within her means, but she had a lot more means than you realize. But apparently, Chris Farley knew she had a lot more. So with that, let's watch a bit more of the video. However, share this video with the district attorney. This is the truth. The district attorney has never been given or has refused to receive. All of you need to literally just send this, and as many times as you need to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The district attorney must watch this video and hear the truth from Jonathan Farley.
I want people charged, or not even from me, from the police, their own video. I want these people charged with crimes. A clear crime occurred. Email districtattorney@monroecounty.gov. And if the police will not investigate, then someone else needs to investigate them. Whether it's the FBI, whether it's the state police, who also haven't responded to me when I said I wanted to charge these people with crimes. Something needs to be done.
Absolutely. Now let's watch a bit more of the video. But before we do, what do you do for work? You don't have to tell you where you work, but what do you do? Because you're a very highly respected person yourself.
I'm a mathematician, but thank you for saying that.
Yes, and just to put context to this isn't someone who is after the money. I've talked with him extensively. Our first conversation was over an hour. His only interest, and I gleaned this, I put my reputation on this as best as I can discern, is his mother's health, well-being, and safety, not the money interest.
I want my mother freed. I want my mother to be able to make her own decision. And even though I've only spoken to her for 40 minutes over the past 11 months, and I'll tell you what happened. It was when she was at the emergency department of Rochester General Hospital. I was speaking with her. She actually seemed fine. She said she was in no pain. They were just doing tests, along with a family friend who's known our family for over half a century. And then 6 security guards from the hospital came, along with 2 other hospital employees, and forced me out, one of them assaulting me. And then later, the family friend, who's 78 years old, was also forced out about half an hour or an hour later. So it wasn't just Jonathan Farley they were forcing out. But I did speak with my mother for 40 minutes. And as bad as the situation was, I was pleased to see she did not seem mentally incompetent even then on October 26th, 9 months after they took her by force and started giving her mind-altering drugs against her will.
Wow. So people on every level are culpable of this kidnapping and torture. And as the accidental sadistic was like Marsha from Brady Bunch, but much more serious. Sadistic is what this is best described. Let's watch more of the video here and stay tuned, because in a few minutes, we're going to open up the phone lines. You'll be able to share your feelings about this with Jonathan, with me, ask questions, and let's hear from you. So we're just going to watch a bit more of the video, give more context to it, reminder, and bring that up, Scalzo, and rock and roll. Thanks, Scalzo, again for his
4-year-old grandmother, Dr. Ena Farley, who was ripped violently from her home by Brockport deputies in Brockport, New York.
I'm not going. I don't want to.
This is one of the most depraved, despicable, sadistic things I've ever seen on video. You see, Dr. Ena Farley has lived very happily in her home in Brockport, New York for 50 years. She clearly articulates her wish to remain living in her home and remain part of her community with skilled nursing care to help her with her memory problems. And she only has some memory problems. She's entirely cogent and very clear and very bright and very smart.
Look, they strapped her down like a murderer.
Yeah. And I want to add that my mother on that day was actually less clear than I'd ever seen her in 3 years, with 2 exceptions ever. And those 2 exceptions were when she had low blood sugar. My mother had told me January 30th, 6 days before this, that she thought she must have been drugged by Mary Ho. And my mother did, in fact, I was concerned. But as of January 17, before Mary Ho moved in, as I said, my mother had short-term memory problems, meaning precisely she couldn't remember what happened the day before, typically. But other than that, she could reason, she could make decisions. I could have discussions with her, and did.
All right, so she may have been even drugged, again, allegedly, possibly drugged by Mary Ho, and this is why we need an investigation. Continuing.
Monroe County Sheriff's deputies forced her out of her home, and she was forced against her will, strapped into a gurney like an animal. And she was taken from her home into this facility in Irondequoit, New York, which is in essence a prison for her now. And that place is 40 minutes away from her life, her friends, and her church in Brockport, New York. The facility also will not allow many of her friends.
What's that, Jonathan?
As far as we know, she has not even been allowed to leave that facility, except possibly for a March 27, 2023 court appearance, where I didn't see her. I didn't even know that she was there in the courthouse. Wow. So that facility is tiny. You can walk around it.
Oh, I was going to say that. People think, by the way, because I had a vision, this is big, long facility. It's maybe 100 yards or something. Or
yeah, you could walk around it in 5 minutes. It's tiny. So just imagine that she's been trapped there, as far as we know, with possibly one exception for a couple hours for the past 11 months.
That's called prison, ladies and gentlemen.
Under lock and key.
She doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
And
Betty Rivera says that she demanded that they allow her to call me, and they didn't. And Cranberry Landing's own records state that multiple times my mother demanded that they call police, that she is their prisoner, that they're treating her like a dog. And this is all with their drugs that they're giving her, which she also didn't want to take, because she was questioning, what is this? And these are new drugs that she never had to take before.
And who's watching her care? Who's actually has her best interest other than you? No one there.
No, because the only doctor, we have not been allowed to send our own doctors, much less her doctor, to evaluate them. They call the people at the facility her doctors now, but they're not. They work for the facility. And obviously they have a financial interest, if not an interest in keeping their licenses, because all of this, certainly from when they took her to when my brother was named temporary guardian, it was all illegal. They had no legal right to keep her there until perhaps when my brother was named temporary guardian in March. So that's over a month. These people need to be worried about going to prison.
Right, absolutely. And we're gonna make sure they're held accountable. Continuing here.
Or family members to even visit her. At what point do senior citizens lose the right to decide where they want to live? This is one of the worst, most sadistic things I've seen. Watch this.
I'm not gonna grab her. I can't. I'm not gonna grab her. I can't.
A few moments later.
I am. I'm not going. I don't want to.
For human rights.
No.
I'm not gonna grab her. I can't. Can we open up the door? We're not.
And remember, police are allowed to legally lie. That's messed up there, and they did.
Not taking her.
You're breaking my arm. You're breaking my.
We have to get
My
on the
son.
stretcher.
No, you don't have to. No, do not. Do not.
You're okay. We're not.
No, I'm not going. I'm barefooted. I know you are.
Look at how smug that, I think, is an EMS worker. How smug she is. This is not a joke. They're kidnapping someone, and she's freaking laughing.
Stop. Do you see that female?
I said that there.
To the left.
And I want to point out.
I know you are.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
That I asked Monroe County to tell me who the ambulance workers were, and they say, oh, they don't have that information. But what I want is, even though my father's amazing cousin, Jane Farley, was my attorney and saved my mother at the guardianship trial that took place on December 18 and December 19, 2023, I want to point out that as a result of the deal that hasn't been written yet and signed by the judge, but the agreement was he would declare that my mother have a neutral guardian, not my brother, Chris Farley, but that hasn't happened yet. So my brother still is the guardian. But regardless, this is a crime. It doesn't even matter what the result was.
No.
This is a crime that took place. My mother should never even have been in that position because no doctor had declared her to be mentally incompetent. No judge at that time had declared her to be mentally incompetent. No, she was not mentally incompetent, certainly not as of 2 weeks before this. And we were not allowed to have our own doctors evaluate her.
No, it's wrong on every level. So I'm going to let this play a little bit, Jonathan, then we're going to take some phone calls. So stay tuned. Lots more to come. Going to play more of this video, and not the whole thing, just a few more minutes, and we're going to open up the phone lines. So be prepared. Call in, talk to Jonathan, share your feelings about this, and what are you going to do about it? And legally, peacefully, fully.
She thinks this is funny. An 84-year-old, distinguished, loving member of the Brockport, New York community is being tortured, and she laughs.
Skip ahead here.
Human rights. No!
Just squealing. And she better get that piece of paper back. All those pieces of paper. They are taking her out by force. Mom.
That's Dr. Ena Farley's son.
Skip ahead a little bit here.
The social worker's not.
Do not take me anywhere now.
Unfortunately,
no, I don't want to.
She's going to have to be boosted up. Yeah.
Do not take me anywhere now.
Got it?
No.
Yep.
Got it?
Yep.
How dare you?
There's not one single good person there. Every one of them are evil, sadistic, malicious.
Yes.
Criminals.
Ask me if I try to stop them.
Not.
No, leave me back. Leave me back.
You're like trying to do
Leave me in my house. Leave me in my house.
You know, it's okay.
Leave me in my house.
It's okay. It's not okay.
Leave me in my house. Leave me in my house. Leave me.
She is begging to be left in her house. This is subhuman.
It's subhuman. Let's skip ahead.
Bring that down. I got this.
Because I'm black. It's because you're breaking my arm. You're breaking my arm.
Actually, if I could
I
say
don't
something.
want to go. You're breaking my arm.
Yep.
You're breaking my arm. I don't want.
Relax.
I want
And
to
then
point
they
out
say
that,
relax.
that not only is it the day before Martin Luther King's birthday, but also my mother was an historian of African and Afro-American history. She wrote about Reconstruction in upstate in New York State. And what we witnessed is almost as if slavery had not been abolished or that the fugitive slave law were still in effect. They're acting as if because they had tricked her into leaving the house, kidnapping her by trickery 5 days before and put her who knows where, maybe Cranberry Landing, that therefore she no longer has any rights. And that's what the social worker, Abby Baldoff, was saying, that my mother was like a child, and a child doesn't get to decide on what its address is.
No. So I'm going to open up the phone lines now. And also, if anyone would like to, give a super chat, super thanks, and always appreciated, never expected, but always welcome. Appreciate your support in that, and or PayPal and Cash App as well. And I want to thank Jonathan Farley for setting the record straight here. So phone lines are open now. And also my email is there as well. If you wanted to email me, you can email me. And 305-707-8325. That's 305-707-8325 or 401-787-1448. And let's see if the 401 number works. Last week it didn't work for some reason. But give me a call and share your feelings, your thoughts and feelings about this. And also what should be done about it. And sometimes it takes a few minutes for people to start calling. And I know you got feelings about this, so give a call.
And even though the violence was on February 5, on January 31st, when they took my mother the first time, kidnapped her without any apparent violence, that was also a crime. And that may have been the chief crime, quite frankly. And you can find the original police videos at Ena Farley Jan 31. Ena Farley JAN31.com. And so you can just see for yourself. Don't think, oh, these are edited videos. You can see the original police videos, which they actually edited themselves. On January 31st, you can hear the police say, but the real issue is, and then it cuts off.
Wow.
Are they even allowed to edit the videos like that?
No, they're not supposed to. But here's Jonathan and ladies and gentlemen, why it's always important to record every police interaction and every government interaction. Because, for example, police have body cams. Many times they mute them. And many times they turn them off. And many times you try to get the footage. I know in Union City, there was a woman who had a room unlawfully broken into. And she has been trying to get the body cams, and they want to charge $500 to $600 for her to get that footage. That should be freaking free.
Yeah.
Or they will drag their feet, like in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I've been covering a corrupt mayor there for years. And they just won't give the footage. Or they sometimes redact it, they edit it, chop it up. And so that's why we have to record ourselves. All right, caller, you are on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from and what would you like to say?
My name's Allie and I'm from Illinois.
Well, pleasure to have you here. And what do we have two? Can you hear me? Did we lose sound? I see some twos there. What do the twos mean? Just a minute. Some people put twos in the chat. But anyway, go ahead. And if you can hear me and our caller, please put one. Go ahead, Ellie.
I just have no words. It's so disgusting. I've been in healthcare for 20-some years, and this is just unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
And what do you think needs to be done at this point? Like, what do you see needs to be done?
I think you need to start reaching out to big name celebrities, Dr. Phil, Oprah. I mean, tagging people that might pick up traction.
All right. Yep. That's
hearing story.
That's part of it. And also step one, if you can send my video, if you would be willing to do that for Ena Farley as well. And all the viewers here now, send my video. The first one I did, gonna have over 72,000 views and growing. And this video here, because this tells the full story directly from Jonathan himself, who was a witness to all of this. So let's get it out. Dr. Phil, Oprah, investigative journalists in New York State, get it out there. And also send this to state senators in New York State, assemblymen, assemblywomen, same thing. They got to know this. And if enough people do it, demanding an investigation immediately and demanding immediately that Ena Farley be brought back to her home, then we're making some headway here. So anything else before we go, Ellie? All right, well, Ellie, thank you so much for calling. And phone lines are open if you'd like to share as well. Thank you so much, Ellie from Illinois. And what else? What would you? Oh, here we go. And welcome. You're live on Leroy Truth Investigations. Leroy Truth here. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what would you like to say?
Eric Olson, ERICOLSON. I'm calling from Montana.
Eric, welcome from Montana. What would you like to say?
About the video with the I saw that a couple weeks ago with the 84-year-old woman, and it just breaks my heart. It's so disgusting what's going on in our country. I just want to be a part to try to change it.
Right, absolutely. And you can, the simple act of join the Army of Freedom. And because I'm going to have a focal point, an email will be sent out every week, giving the information, phone number, email address, social media of 2 politicians based upon whatever story I'm focused on that week. So that way, together, organized, we'll have hundreds, thousands of people calling the same politicians, the same district attorneys, demanding that they do the right thing here. So, and if you could send this video and my other video out to everyone, that would be super helpful also.
And Mr. Olson,
I'm not too great with computers, but I'm learning slowly. I do some things, but I'm so far with just the basics. It's so annoying.
Well, even just make a phone call then. A phone call is all good. That would be absolutely something you could do. And
yes, please do that, Mr. Olson.
Yep.
Is this Leroy?
Yep, this is Leroy, and Jonathan just asked you personally if you would call the district attorney on his mother's behalf. And this is Leroy.
Hang on a second. And that's the district attorney's on the second number on the channel.
No, it's in my description. In fact, can you put the district attorney's number in here? What's that, Jonathan?
You can also email district attorney, all one word, at monroecounty.gov. Monroe County, one word. So district attorney at monroecounty.gov. You could send an email saying, investigate this crime.
Good. And do both things. So thank you so much for your call, and keep watching.
All right, man. Hey,
yeah.
Just super quick, man. I started a silly channel about a year ago. Interviewed some officers, and thinking, no way in hell they're this bad in Montana. Quite the opposite, man. I feel like I have such a big target on my back. Yes, it's a silly channel. I don't produce much because not much happens out here. Following a couple stories from these tyrants, but it's just sick everywhere, the whole country.
No, we're here to change it, and you're part of that change because you're not going to accept how it is.
Okay, I need to get more brave.
Well, feel the
big inspiration.
Oh, I appreciate that, and the key is feel the fear and do it anyway. That's how any of us got started, including me when I first started this. So I really appreciate you. God bless you. Thanks for your support.
All right, man.
Okay, take care now.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you, Lenny, for putting the number in there, 305-707-8325. And maybe the other number's not working, the 401 number. So, you know what? Just get rid of the 401. Just keep it Scalzo as the 305 number. And how does that feel? Get some support, from around the country, for your mother here.
It's great. And I want to thank you for having the video racking up 72,000 views now. But I want the district attorney to be charging people with crimes. And if not, then I want some other law enforcement agency to be looking into why the district attorney is not charging people with crimes.
Right, exactly.
A woman was simply kidnapped from her home. And despite my amazing cousin's success in court at the guardianship trial, getting the judge to have an agreement where there'd be a neutral guardian, not my brother, but so far he's still the temporary guardian. Despite that, my mother is still being held against her will, and this should never have even started She should never even have been in this position. And I want it all investigated.
Absolutely. That's the bottom line. And we the people, we the people, everyone who's watching this, who's listening to this, you can change it. You can absolutely change the future of Ena Farley's life for the years that she has left, to bring her home. Because remember, as Martin Luther King has said, the problem is not that we are outnumbered. The problem is that we are out-organized. And these videos and what I'm doing is organizing. And it doesn't even take that many people to not just demand change, but to create change. Our voice has got to be heard. And everyone thinks someone else is going to do that, or I'm too busy to do that. No one is too busy to hold the government accountable and save Ena Farley. This will literally save her life. So, yes, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? And what would you like to say?
Hey, Leroy, it's 1010 for Freedom from Wisconsin. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Watching this video, my blood pressure shot up unbelievably. I am so disgusted by what law enforcement has become today. It just makes me sick to my stomach.
Well,
what you said about organizing, all right? Somehow, all of us need to get together, and we really need to organize big time. We need to start going after these police unions. We need to start going after these police departments one by one, taking them down, putting them in their place, and demanding that every department have members of the community on a review board, not the police department themselves investigating themselves.
Right.
I am so sick and tired of that. It's like, well, of course they found no wrongdoing, and then everybody just goes on their way.
Right. And that's a problem, because that just breeds corruption. When you have the people that are accused of many times crimes against humanity allowed to investigate themselves. And if a police officer didn't do the wrong thing, there's nothing to fear from an outside investigative unit. And there are police officers who are accused of doing things that they did not do. Because I only want truth. I don't have a side. I don't hate anyone. I just want people who do the wrong thing held accountable. You know, whether it's police officer, ambulance worker, mayor, prosecutor, whoever it is. And we have to have external investigations for that to happen.
Absolutely. And it makes me mad that they could treat this elderly woman the way they did. No offense to you, Jonathan, is it?
Yes.
If that were my mother, I'd be sitting in jail right now, because nobody would have treated my mother that way.
Yeah, it's so wrong.
And
it's so wrong what they've done. But again, unless we're in that circumstance, you know, that's something. Because my first take was, I would have fought the police. In reality, they're going to end up kicking the shit out of us. And
it depends.
there's no winning. They're going to call more people. So when people say take the arrest, then there's no one that can help his mother. So I support Jonathan in his choice here, because in prison,
I do too.
He's not going to know what happens. And again, I'm not faulting you. And I've said it too. I said it on my video originally. Like, I would have fought the cops. I wouldn't let them take him in. But then who's there, since he's the only son that has his mother's best interest at heart? He could have stayed in jail. Who knows? No bail, no bond for months and months. And so I do feel that, Jonathan, that he did the right thing for this.
And if I can add something also, I want to say that given that we know that there is a plot by Mary Ho to take my mother's house, that they would have then taken my mother's house. All they needed was for me to be gone. It's on the police body camera footage for January 31st that that they wanted me to get out of the house, and the police were saying that's our next step, to get him out of here. That's what they said, the police, on the police body camera footage. And that if they had gotten me out of there, Mary Ho would have moved back. She said she was going to move back and change the locks. So then we could have lost our house.
So if he went to jail, his mother loses the house. So again, you made the right call, Jonathan, and you were there. None of us were there. You know, we can't say what you did was right or wrong. Only you know. And from what you just told me, it sounds like you absolutely made the right call. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. And as soon as he gets that body cam footage, that needs to go to everybody, Lackluster, AFA, DMA. It needs to go to the movement.
Yep.
It needs to go to Long Island Audit. It needs to auditing Erie County. Everybody needs to put that out on their channel and scream from the rooftops. How can this happen in America? We are not freaking Germany.
Right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I'll be contacting a number of those channels, and I know most of them, and asking them.
I don't know any of them, so please tell me. I don't know any of them, and I'd be happy to write them. But if you know them, please write them yourself, and also let me know who I should be writing. But so far, only this great channel has talked about these videos. There's another great channel, Free Ena Farley, which ran some videos. There's a great documentary by a man who got nominated for an Emmy twice, named Terrence Donnellan. He made a video talking about the Mary Ho and the house. But this is, yes, I agree with you, and I hope you can help get this information out to as many people as possible, especially these agencies that you mentioned that I don't know about myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will help in the movement any way I can, Leroy, whether it's up front or behind the scenes. I am tired of this stuff.
I appreciate that. And one step is to join the Army of Freedom. I just put it on the screen now. Everyone, it takes you 6 seconds. It's free. Join the armyoffreedom.com. That's the armyoffreedom.com. And takes you 6 seconds, and I'll be sending emails starting this week. So thanks for the call. Got another caller. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Later.
Okay, later. Bye. All right, caller, you are on the air with Leroy Truth and Leroy Truth Investigations Live. What's your name, where are you calling from, and what would you like to share? You're live. Go ahead. That was the shortest call on the program so far. And the numbers are up there, 305-707-8325. We're going to go another 10 minutes. We're going to go to 9:30 Eastern, and then we'll end the show at that point. Let's give a few more people a chance to call in. And thank you so much, YouTube Turns. $2 super chat. Contact APS, the Adult Protective Service, also.
Well, can I give you that story? I can tell you the story about Adult Protective Services in Monroe County. On February 3rd, I contacted them to find out, 2023, to find out where my mother was. I could sense they weren't going to tell me, but they said my mother was safe. Well, you have now seen that video, the still photo of my mother with the bruises on her face and 2 deep bruises and blood in her eye. She obviously was not safe wherever she was. Months later, I contacted Anna Thomas of Adult Protective Services because I'd gone to an elder abuse conference, and Anna Thomas said that she could legally get financial data without having a judge's order. So I contacted her and said, hey, can you help here because of all these financial discrepancies in my mother's finances that my brother has stated from what we subpoenaed, the documents we subpoenaed. Anna Thomas, she did call me, but she didn't even let me get a sentence in, a complete sentence. And so that is the help that I got from Adult Protective Services. Every elder abuse agency I contacted failed my mother, Ena Farley.
Wow.
It's disgraceful. I've contacted, I think, all of them.
Right.
And at most, I would get a call back with no follow-up. And then more recently, I did get 2-hour-long calls with 2 agencies. But as you could see, my mother remained at Cranberry Landing. They were uninterested in how she got to Cranberry Landing, even though, as you saw from the video, it was completely illegal the way she got there, which should matter.
Absolutely. And either this, here, I want to show this here, and either this is the supreme law of the land, there's a copy of the United States Constitution, or it's not. This doesn't give us rights. This is supposed to make sure the government protects these fundamental human rights. And Ena Farley, Dr. Ena Farley's rights were completely shredded by everyone in the system, every step of the way.
Yeah. And still are, because she is still being held against her will, and I'm still prevented from speaking with her, even though the judge declared that I should be able to see my mother on December 20, 2023.
Right.
My lawyers contacted Cranberry Landing, and they said I have to contact Chris Farley, which I refused to do because I believe he should be charged with crimes, that he is a criminal and should be arrested. So I don't want to talk to him.
Absolutely. And imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if this was your mother, how long does she have left? I hope she still has, many years left, but it's not that many. She wants Jonathan to be in her life. She wants to be in her home. I mean, this is one of the most egregious things I've ever seen.
On the police video, January 31st, on the police video, February 5. And according to Retta Rivera, who said she worked at Cranberry Landing for 3 months, my mother said she wanted to call me and they wouldn't let her.
Wow. It's criminal.
Criminals have more rights than my mother. Criminals get to call who they want. Criminals get to choose their own attorney, which my mother was not allowed to do.
You're absolutely.
Criminals get to receive visitors of their own choosing, which my mother was not allowed to do.
So a free woman, a good woman, a kind woman, a woman that loved her community and her community loved her.
And I want to point out that I had offered even to quit my job, if need be, to stay with my mother permanently. In the end, I actually could have stayed with my mother without having to quit my job. But I've seen her for 40 minutes over the past 11 months. My brother, Chris Farley, according to Cranberry Landing's own records, visited her 3 or 4 times between mid-February and July 2023, the only time they gave us the records for. A space of about 150 days, he only saw her 3 or 4 times. One of those days was for a court appearance.
Incredible.
That's how much he cares.
And we have time. I know that it's disgusting, despicable. And Todd Scully, I saw your comment. If she had money, she could pay for a full-time caregiver and stay at her own house. She didn't need a caregiver. That's why she didn't have one.
I can assert that I stayed with my mother between mid-March 2020 and late August 2022 during the pandemic, just because it was the pandemic. She actually didn't need taking care of, despite that the fact that my mother's doctor said she was totally taken care of by me. She didn't need taking care of. She could get her pills. She took her pills, which were for conditions like high blood pressure. Did the police look like they cared about her high blood pressure, incidentally?
Oh, they escalated things that, she could have gone downhill very quickly right during that violent interaction. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, it was violent.
Yes. So she could take care of herself, but to keep her company, it would have been nice. And incidentally, so she didn't need anyone, but I could have stayed there and was willing to stay there. And I'm now willing to stay there and have been stating my willingness to stay there for the past 11 months. But I was ignored. But as you can see from the Cranberry Landing visiting records, my brothers aren't visiting either. One brother hasn't been to this area for about 9 years. He used to date Mary Ho, incidentally. The other brother, as I just said, we have the information. He's visited my mother 3 or 4 times at Cranberry Landing in a space of about 150 days. The other brother visited about 10 times in that same time period, but that brother saw my mother 3 times in 5 years.
Disgusting.
I talked to her every day, practically every day, if not every day, for years.
Yep. And
even before the pandemic.
I featured this particular comment here from Rob L. Wedeman. Chris is worse than a rat. He's a blood traitor.
Yes, I don't understand.
Sounds like the key. Lenny Malley. Lenny, old folks' homes are cruel and unusual punishment. Many of them are. Some are not, but many of them are, and they neglect their patients.
Well,
That's a whole other story right there, ladies and gentlemen. Nursing home care or uncare. We physically saw it. You saw it in the thumbnail of a bruised, battered, however it happened. We don't know how it happened. Did she fall? Did someone attack her? We don't know that. But she looks bruised and battered, and that's not a woman that's being cared for by any means. She should be in her home. So any last words you'd like to share before we end for the evening, Jonathan?
Yes, I want help suing all these people who need to be sued, the police, Cranberry Landing. And so it's, believe it or not, it's difficult to get attorneys. But my mother wouldn't have made it this far without, even though she's unaware of what we've been doing because of she's been held prisoner. But without the help of my father's amazing cousin, Jane Farley, who managed to at least get the judge to agree to have a neutral guardian and not my brother, but also other family friends who were spreading word of the videos. My mother's church friend who was able to make the videos that can show everyone, even though she only gave them to our lawyers and didn't want necessarily, she was making the videos just to make the videos. But those videos show my mother is not mentally incompetent, even after getting months worth of drugs, mind-altering drugs against her will by the facility. So without those people helping, and also my cousin Sylvia Farley, my mother would be in an even worse situation. But still, a crime was committed, and the district attorney needs to be contacted at districtattorney@monroecounty.gov. Demanded, and it must be demanded that people be charged with the crime that laymen would call kidnapping.
Right, absolutely. So you saw it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Jonathan Farley so much for sharing the truth, getting to the bottom and sharing a lot of details. And appreciate everyone for joining myself, him, and we the people on this beautiful Sunday evening. Because I'll state once again, alone, we will fail and fall. United, we will stand. And the problem has not been that we are outnumbered. The problem is that we have been out-organized. Join the Army of Freedom now. If you're not, I'll be sending, actually, the first email, it'll either be this week or no later than next week. And I will not be doing a live this Sunday as I'm going on a motorcycle adventure trip down south, renting a couple of Harleys and going down and getting some sun and warmth from this cold weather we have in the Northeast. But I appreciate each of you. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel now. And if you'd like to share a super chat or super thanks, always appreciated. And subscribe to my video, watch the original video in its entirety, watch my other videos, and stay tuned for the Union City, New Jersey video. Possibly the most corrupt mayor in the United States, Mayor Brian P. Stack. I am just sharing allegations, not making statements, to be super clear. And you have to watch that video. It's going to drop tomorrow at 12 noon. It's going to be a live premiere, 11 minutes of a gentleman saying point blank that he didn't vote. Mayor Brian Stack spied on him, and many other city workers called him on the phone and said, hey, why didn't you vote? And then, well, I was out helping my daughter who has some special needs in Philadelphia. And what did he do? Oh, okay, well, I can fix that for you. Here, I'm going to send you an absentee ballot. And I also have an actual letter that was sent out to government workers, city workers who didn't vote. And by by Brian P. Stack, the mayor of Union City, New Jersey, and signed by him. You'll see it. I got the letter. I read you the letter. If this doesn't scream investigate, nothing does. I'm going to want everyone to investigate. FBI, the Attorney General of the United States. I've heard the Attorney General of New Jersey is not someone who may be independent. Again, I'm not stating fact, but if you are independent, New Jersey Attorney General, because I know you're watching these videos, then you need to look into Mayor and State Senator Brian Stack immediately about these allegations of election pressure and coercion and pay to play. So this is Leroy Truth for Leroy Truth Investigations. Again, thank you, Scalzo Photo, for all the production you do behind the scenes. So much he does. He also does some work with Sean Long Island Audits. And I appreciate each of you. God bless you. Share and like this video, and we'll see you next time. And make sure to come to my live premiere tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. I'll see you then. Take care, everybody.